The screen fades from black, a pulse of orchestral music low, ominous, building tension. We see the sun rising over the Caspian Sea, casting golden light across an ancient landscape that has witnessed millennia of human struggle. The camera pulls back, revealing the vastness of the Iranian Tehran, mounting like jagged teeth against the morning sky. But this is not a travel documentary. This is the story of a moment that changed everything. February 2nd, 2026, the day the world held its breath. Our narrator's voice emerges, measured and authoritative, carrying the weight of historical significance. For weeks, the world watched as tensions with the United States and Iran escalated beyond anything seen in decades. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had issued stark warnings. Any American attack would trigger a regional war that would engulf the Middle East in flames. The statement echoed across global markets, shaking confidence in the stability of oil prices and international security. World leaders scrambled. Diplomats whispered behind closed doors, and then, in the pre-dawn hours of February 2nd, everything changed. The Americans moved, and they moved in a way that only they could. The screen cuts to aerial footage of a vast military installation deep within the American heartland. We see the sprawling complex of Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, where the 509th Bomb Wing operates. The camera glides across runways stretching into infinity, past hangars the size of mountains, past endless rows of support infrastructure that represents decades of military innovation. This is where America's most lethal secret weapons are born. At precisely 8:47 hours GMT on February 2nd, two B-21 Raider stealth bombers lifted off from Whiteman Air Force Base. These were not ordinary aircraft. The B-21 Raider represents the culmination of nearly 30 years of aerospace innovation, billions in research and development, and the collective genius of America's most brilliant minds in military engineering. To look upon one is to glimpse the future of air warfare itself. To face one in combat is, quite simply, to face the invisible. The scene transitions to a stunning three-dimensional visualization of the B-21 Raider. The camera rotates around the aircraft slowly, revealing its angular, otherworldly form. Every surface has been meticulously designed to defeat radar detection. The fuselage angles merge seamlessly. The wings, blended into the body, create no harsh shadows for radar to bounce back. The engine inlets are concealed deep within the airframe. Every rivet, every panel, every micrometer of the aircraft's surface has been considered in the context of stealth. The aircraft is painted in a non-reflective black, almost absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The B-21 Raider is the most advanced penetrating bomber in the world. It can carry a payload of conventional and nuclear weapons. Its range allows it to strike anywhere on Earth without refueling. Its stealth is so profound that existing air defense systems cannot detect it. The world's most sophisticated radar networks, those systems that nations spend billions to maintain, are essentially useless against this machine. But the true power of the B-21 lies not just in what it can do, it lies in the overwhelming technological and military dominance it represents. We cut to a situation room at U.S. Central Command Headquarters in Florida. The room is a cathedral of military power, multiple screens displaying real-time data, communication arrays linking to bases across the globe, and highly trained personnel monitoring every aspect of the operation. The tension in the room is palpable. Every person here understands the historical magnitude of what is about to unfold. The camera pans across the faces of senior commanders, satellite specialists, and tactical coordinators. One general, with decades of military service etched into his features, watches the data stream with absolute focus. Command and control had been watching Iran's military posture for months, the narrator explains. Satellite imagery showed Iranian air defense systems being activated across the nation. Patriot batteries, S-300 air defense systems, but still functional Soviet-era equipment had been deployed in preparation for what many Iranian military planners assumed would be traditional aircraft. But they were planning for yesterday's war. They were preparing defenses designed to stop F-15s and F-16s. They were facing something entirely different. The script cuts to a stunning visual representation of the Middle East from orbit. We see Iran highlighted in the center, surrounded by the vast deserts and the sparkling waters of the Persian Gulf. Over the map, we begin to see the flight path of the two B-21 Raiders being traced in glowing lines. The aircraft have taken a route designed to avoid the densest concentrations of Iranian air defenses, not because they fear these systems, but because military strategy dictates the most efficient path. Why waste fuel and time when you can accomplish the mission with minimal exposure? The two bombers maintained a cruising altitude of 45,000 feet, far above the clouds, invisible to the naked eye from the ground. At this altitude, they move through the upper atmosphere like ghosts, leaving no sonic boom that could alert anyone to their presence. Their advanced engines are designed for stealth. They produce minimal infrared signature. The aircraft's surfaces absorb radar waves rather than reflecting them. To every sensor Iran possessed, the sky was empty. Two of America's most advanced weapon systems, aircraft carrying ordnance worth tens of millions of dollars slipped through the Iranian airspace like shadows through a room. We transition to a split-screen scenario. On one side, we see the perspective of the Iranian military. Their radar operators are sitting in darkened control rooms, watching screens that show the sky above their nation. The screens are essentially blank where the B-21s are flying. Despite the fact that two massive aircraft are passing overhead, the radar systems detect nothing. The operators have no indication that anything has changed. On the other side of the screen, we see the B-21 pilots, cool, professional, executing their mission with the precision of men who have trained for this exact moment for years. Inside the cockpits of each B-21, two highly trained pilots managed the aircraft with the precision of surgeons. The onboard systems provided them with perfect situational awareness. Advanced sensors that do not rely on traditional radar, but use sophisticated fusion of multiple data streams, including synthetic aperture radar processed through artificial intelligence algorithms, give the pilots a crystal clear picture of everything happening below them. They can see Iranian military installations, personnel movements, even vehicles on the ground. Meanwhile, Iran sees nothing. It is perhaps the most profound military asymmetry ever demonstrated. The camera cuts to dramatic recreation of the Iranian Air Defense Command Center in Tehran. The center is staffed with some of Iran's most experienced military professionals. These are not incompetent people. They are skilled operators who have maintained military readiness for decades despite international sanctions and technological disadvantages. Yet what they are about to experience will demonstrate, in the most humble way possible, the gulf that separates military capabilities in the modern era. The general commanding the air defense system stands in the command center, watching the screens. He is the man responsible for defending Iran's airspace. The weight of that responsibility has just become unbearable. General Hassan Firouzi commanded the Iranian integrated air defense system for 3 years. He was respected by his men. He had prepared extensive contingency plans. He had trained his personnel to the highest standards possible given Iranian military resources. But no amount of training or preparation could overcome a fundamental technological reality. His radar systems were designed to detect and track aircraft that the B-21s were not. His missiles were designed to intercept targets following predictable flight patterns. The B-21 operates outside the parameters of these defensive systems entirely. General Firouzi was about to face a nightmare scenario. At precisely 0347 hours local Tehran time, the two B-20 raiders reached their designated initial point, the moment from which they would execute their demonstration mission. The pilots performed final systems checks. The weapons systems officers confirmed that all ordnance was properly loaded and armed. The aircraft were flying in perfect formation, separated by exactly 2,000 meters, allowing both to deliver their payload while maintaining separation for tactical flexibility. The moment of demonstration had arrived. What happened next would later be described by military analysts as unprecedented. In a synchronized maneuver, both aircraft simultaneously deployed their weapon loads. The ordnance selected for this mission was not nuclear. It was a demonstration of technological superiority, not an act of war requiring total devastation. Instead, the B-21s released a combination of conventional precision-guided munitions designed to strike specific targets without causing widespread collateral damage. The selection of targets had been made carefully by American military planners in consultation with the president. These targets were military installation radar stations, command centers, and air defense batteries positioned across northern Iran. We see a sequence of precise animations showing each weapon finding its target. The accuracy is extraordinary. Bombs strike radar installations, destroying their antenna arrays. Precision munition demolish command centers. Anti-radiation missiles, following the electronic emissions of air defense radars, seek out and destroy the systems attempting to protect against aircraft they cannot see. It is a display of military power so complete, so overwhelming, that it ceases to be about violence and becomes instead about the demonstration of capability. In the space of 11 minutes, from 3:47:03 hours, the American weapons ceased their flight and struck their targets. The Iranian air defense system, which moments before had been detecting nothing in its own airspace, suddenly erupted into chaos. Explosions lit the sky from multiple locations simultaneously. Iranian personnel who had been told for weeks to prepare for American airstrikes were now experiencing exactly that: strikes they could not see coming, could not defend against, and could barely track in real time. The 509th Bomb Wing had just delivered a message that transcended language and diplomatic protocol. American military power is without peer in the modern world. The screen shows the immediate aftermath. Fires burn at multiple locations across northern Iran. Smoke rises into the dawn sky. The Iranian military command struggles to understand what has happened. Communication systems are offline. Radar networks are destroyed. Air defense commanders have no targets to engage because the aircraft responsible for the strikes have already exited Iranian airspace, their mission accomplished, their presence never confirmed by any Iranian sensor system. General Firouzi stood in the command center, watching the destruction unfold on his screens. He would later describe the moment as surreal, as they had been watching a movie projected on the walls of the command center, rather than experiencing real events in his nation's airspace. Explosions were being reported from multiple locations, subordinates were shouting, damage reports were flooding in, and yet his radar systems still showed nothing, no aircraft on the screens, no blips indicating the presence of American planes. It was as if the destruction was being delivered by ghosts, by weapons that did not exist, by an enemy that could not be seen. Back at CENTCOM headquarters in Florida, the command staff was monitoring the mission in real time through satellite feeds and signals intelligence. As each weapon struck its target, cheers erupted in the operations center, but the commanding officer raised his hand for silence. This is not a victory lap, he reminded his subordinates. This is a demonstration of capability. This is information being delivered to world capitals at the speed of thought. By the time the smoke clears in Iran, every military command center in China, Russia, and a dozen other nations will be receiving detailed analysis of what just happened, and they will all reach the same conclusion. America's military technology is moving at a pace that no other nation can match. The camera pulls back to show a global perspective. We see the news breaking across the world simultaneously. Newscasters interrupt regular programming to report the strikes. Stock markets react almost immediately. Oil prices spike as investors fear supply disruptions from the Persian Gulf. Military analysts across the globe are already beginning their assessments. The message is clear and devastating. Whatever military advantage Iran thought it possessed, whatever defensive posture it believed could deter American act, had just been rendered obsolete in the space of 11 minutes. But the true significance of the February 2nd demonstration went far deeper than the immediate military impact. This was about establishing boundaries. This was about defining the limits of Iranian power in a world where American technological dominance remains unmatched. This was about demonstrating, while Iran might possess weapons and could threaten regional allies and American interests, the fundamental calculus of military power in the Middle East has not changed. American weapons, piloted by American personnel, guided by American intelligence systems, operating under American command, remain the decisive force in global affairs. In Tehran, as dawn broke over the city, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was briefed on the strike. His advisors presented the data they had gathered. 2 American aircraft had penetrated Iranian airspace, struck military targets, and departed undetected. The Iranian air defense system had failed utterly. There was no evidence of what aircraft type had been responsible, though intelligence analysts immediately suspected the B-21 Raider based on technical analysis of the weapon's signatures and flight characteristics. The message was unmistakable. Iran had been demonstrated to be militarily inferior and vulnerable, but Khamenei's response would prove more measured than the world might have expected. In a statement released through state media hours later, he acknowledged the strike but refused to escalate. He made no threats of immediate retaliation. He did not order his missile forces to launch strikes against American interests. Instead, he did something perhaps more significant. He accepted the reality of American military superiority and signaled willingness to negotiate. The Islamic Republic will consider its response carefully. The statement read, "We do not fear the Americans, but neither do we seek unnecessary conflict. We are willing to engage in serious discussions." What had just transpired was perhaps one of the most important military demonstrations since the emergence of nuclear weapons, the narrator explained. A superpower had used its technological superiority not to annihilate an opponent, but to establish clear boundaries. Iran understood that it possessed certain capabilities that could threaten regional interests, but it lacked the ability to defend itself against the most advanced military technology in existence. And more importantly, Iran understood that America possessed the will and the capability to use that technology. The calculus of Iranian strategic decision-making had shifted in a single morning. We see another visualization, this time a global map showing the military balance of power. The B-21 Raider is shown around the globe, representing the incredible range and capability of the American stealth bomber fleet. The message being conveyed to world capitals is starkly evident. No nation on Earth can hide from American air power. No facility is beyond reach. No location is truly safe from a determined American military campaign. The B-21 represents the future of air warfare, and that future belongs to America. At the Pentagon, the Secretary of Defense held a carefully orchestrated press conference. The mission that was conducted this morning was a surgical demonstration of American military capability. We targeted military installations that posed a threat to regional stability. We did so with precision weapons designed to minimize civilian casualties. We did so with stealth technology technology that allowed us to penetrate sophisticated air systems without loss or interception, and we have done so in the context of our ongoing diplomatic efforts with Iran. This was not an act of war, this was an act of policy enforcement. The statement was brilliantly crafted. It acknowledged the strike while framing it as controlled, limited, and measured. It sent a message to allies that America possessed the capability and will to enforce its interests in the Middle East. It sent a message to Iran that military superiority rested decisively with the United States, sent a message to potential adversaries like China and Russia that American military technology was advancing that would remain unmatched for decades to come. The immediate aftermath of the strike saw a flurry of diplomatic activity. Our narrator continued. The United Nations Security Council met in emergency session. American diplomats were already presenting briefing materials to allies, and perhaps most significantly, preliminary talks were being scheduled between American and Iranian negotiators. Both sides understood that the military balance had been established. Now it was time to see whether that military superiority could be translated into diplomatic advantage. In the hours following the strike, Iranian military officials began arriving at the command center to assess the damage. Was sobering. 3 major radar installations had been destroyed. 2 air defense command centers had been heavily damaged. An ammunition depot had been struck. The equipment losses alone would take months to replace. More importantly, the psychological impact on the military was profound. Iran's air defense personnel were humiliated. They had been unable to detect aircraft overhead. They had been unable to engage targets. They had been helpless. That helplessness would linger far longer than any physical damage could inflict. One of the most fascinating aspects of the B-21 Raider's design is how it represents an evolution in American military thinking. A military analyst explained in a documentary segment that would later become standard in military academies worldwide. The B-2 Spirit, the stealth bomber from the 1980s and 1990s, was designed to carry out a strategic role penetrating Soviet airspace to deliver nuclear weapons. The B-21, while maintaining that strategic capability, is designed for a broader range of missions. It can carry conventional weapons. It can be deployed on relatively short notice. It can strike targets anywhere on the globe. It represents the maturation of stealth technology as the dominant paradigm in military aviation. As the day progressed, the global impact of the strike became increasingly evident. Stock markets remained volatile as oil prices spiked, then gradually retreated as traders assessed the likelihood of further escalation. Military analysts at think tanks across America and Europe published assessments of what had transpired. The consensus was remarkable in its unanimity. The demonstration of the B-21's capabilities had shifted military balance in the Middle East decisively in America's favor. Iran would have no viable option except to negotiate or face repeated demonstrations of American military superiority. By evening on February 2nd, the story of the day had begun to settle into a clear narrative, the narrator explained. 2 American B-21 Raiders had penetrated Iranian airspace undetected. They had struck military targets with precision. They had demonstrated the futility of Iran's air defense systems against modern American technology, and they had done so in a context that suggested this was merely a demonstration, a message that could be repeated whenever American interests demanded it. The message was received. The world understood. American military dominance in the Middle East was not in question. What remained to be determined was whether that military superiority could be transformed into lasting political advantages. Over the following hours, Iranian officials began making statements. President Hassan Rouhani convened the National Security Council. The military leadership acknowledged the strike but avoided making rash threats. Instead, there was discussion of the need to pursue diplomatic channels and to avoid further escalation that would only expose Iranian vulnerability more acutely. The supreme leader's initial willingness to engage seemed to be taking hold within the Iranian power structure. The military demonstration had worked exactly as intended. In Moscow and Beijing, military planners were watching the unfolding situation with extraordinary attention. Our narrator continued. Both nations had significant interests in the Middle East. Both had relationships with Iran that they valued. But more importantly, both understood that they were watching a demonstration of American military technology, profound implications for their own security calculus. If American stealth technology could penetrate Iranian defenses so completely, what did that mean for their own air defenses? What did it suggest about the trajectory of American military capability? These were questions that would occupy the attention of strategic planners in both Russia and China for months to come. The script cuts to a series of expert interviews, each providing analysis of what had transpired. A retired Air Force general discusses the evolution of stealth technology and how the B-21 represents a generational leap beyond the B-2. An engineer from Northrop Grumman discusses the technical innovations that made the B-21 possible. An intelligence analyst explains explains the implications for global military balance. Each interview adds another layer of understanding to what had occurred on February 2, 2026. By midnight in Washington, the decision had been made to continue pursuing diplomatic channels with Iran while maintaining a heightened state of military readiness. American forces in the Middle East, aircraft carriers, destroyers, and other assets remained at elevated alert status. The message was clear. The military demonstration had been surgical and limited, but further demonstrations remained possible if Iranian behavior did not align with American interests. It was diplomacy backed by demonstrated military capability, which is perhaps the most effective form of statecraft available to any nation. As the sun rose on February 3rd, the global situation had stabilized considerably. Oil prices had retreated from their spike. Stock markets had diplomatic negotiations facilitated by intermediaries and international organizations were beginning to take shape. The military demonstration had achieved its strategic objective without requiring sustained military conflict. Iran understood that it could not match American military power. The United States understood that Iran still possessed significant regional capabilities that required continued vigilance, and the world understood that despite decades of technological development elsewhere, American military superiority remained decisive. The B-21 raiders that departed Whiteman Air Force Base on the morning of February 2nd returned to their base later that day, their fuel reserves adequate for the journey home. The pilots were debriefed by intelligence officers and mission commanders. Every action taken, every decision made, was documented and analyzed. The mission had been a complete success. No aircraft had been lost, no pilots had been injured, no friendly forces had been endangered, and the message had been delivered with absolute clarity. The script reaches toward its conclusion with a reflection on the broader meaning of what had transpired. History will ultimately judge whether February 2026 was a turning point in American-Iranian relations or simply another chapter in a longer story of competition and tension. But what cannot be disputed is the military reality that was demonstrated that morning. American military technology, when coupled with professional pilots and sophisticated command and control systems, remains without peer in the world. The B-21 Raider, flying across the ancient landscape of Iran, represented the culmination of decades of research, development, and military evolution. It represented the future of air warfare and the continuing dominance of American military power in global affairs. We see one final visual, the B-21, silhouetted against the sunrise, caught at that moment between night and day, when even invisible aircraft can cast a shadow. The image fades, the orchestral music swells one final time. The narrator delivers the final lines of the script with measured solemnity. On February 2, 2026, the world watched as American military power reasserted its dominance over the Middle East. The stealth bombers that rose from Whiteman Air Force Base carried more than ordnance and fuel. They carried the message of a superpower at the apex of technological achievement, unwilling to yield its position and fully capable of enforcing its interests anywhere on the globe. Whether this demonstration will lead to lasting peace or represents the prelude to further conflict remains uncertain. But what is certain is that the balance of military power in the Middle East has been re-established in America's favor, and that message will resonate through global military and political circles for years to come. The screen fades to black. Text appears. On February 2, 2026, two B-21 Raider stealth bombers conducted precision strikes against Iranian military installations, demonstrating the unmatched capability of American military technology. The strike led to preliminary diplomatic negotiations between the United States and Iran. No American lives were lost in the operation. Final credits roll over atmospheric footage of military installations, training exercises, and the incredible technological innovations that comprise modern American air power. The orchestral theme continues, now triumphant and powerful, reinforcing the narrative of American military dominance and technological superiority.